What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave, and today we have a very exciting episode planned for you. I'm going to be talking about blue-green again, but this is nowhere near the same list as we talked about during set 5. In fact, I think almost every card is different. There's maybe a couple cards that carry over, like fishbone quill. That's just good across the board. But this is going to be doing something very different than we've seen before and doing a kind of item discard. I think it's really pretty interesting, and I think it could be a menace in the meta if people aren't expecting it and aren't tech to play against it. That being said, big congratulations again to our giveaway winner from the previous video. Thank you guys so much to the people who took the time to enter the booster box giveaway. We'll have another one of those coming at 3,000 subs, and we're headed in that direction very quickly. So if you haven't had a chance to subscribe, now is a great time to do so. That being said, big shout out to the Patreons who make those giveaways on the channel possible. If you guys haven't got a chance, definitely say thank you to those Patreons because they are funding those booster box giveaways and the giveaways that are also happening as Patreon exclusive. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the Patreon and you want to win some cool stuff, definitely pop over there, link in the description. But without any further ado, let's get into talking about this Sapphire Emerald item discard. So the first card is going to be a Sapphire item staple, and that is going to be Popsicle. You know it, you love it. A 1-cost inkable item. When you play this item, you may draw a card and you can banish it to remove 2 damage from something. Obviously fantastic with something like Toma, where you can banish it, get it back, draw a card, get it back, draw a card over and over again every turn. With Toma can be very good. And Popsicle with Hyrum, obviously play it down, draw 1, and then banish it with Hyrum to draw 2. Yes, we have a new background today. The Merlin and Mim background will be back, but I thought we'd look at some official and different art today. Next up in the 1-drop slot, and in fact this is our only other 1-drop in the deck. The deck is very light on 1-drops, has no 1-drop characters, but we have Ice Block, a 1-cost uninkable item. You can exert it to give a character -1 attack, which can be great for getting some favorable challenges in. With characters with 1 attack, you can challenge them without taking any damage. You can kind of ping away at them with multiple characters. Then jumping over the 2-drop slot and some characters, we are on 4 Ursula Deceiver, a 2-cost inkable character, 1/3 questing for 1, and when you play this character you get to look at your opponent's hand and choose a song card from it and force them to discard that card. Fantastic, obviously into Steel Song. It's good into the Emerald Steel matchup. It can be good against Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Amethyst to snipe out those big songs like Be Prepared, and sometimes those smaller songs. Taking away friends on the other side never hurts. So she's going to be doing great stuff. She is also going to be a way for us to sing one of our very important songs in the deck and take advantage of some additional shenanigans. Next up in the 2-drop slot, a card that I feel like was really popular when it came out and has kind of fallen out of favor. That is going to be Noi Orphan Thief, a 2-cost inkable character, 1/2 stat line questing for 2. And when you have an item in play, this character is going to gain resist +1 and ward, which is going to keep it out of the range of things like grab your sword. It does have 2 defense, so it's going to prevent grab your swords from killing it because it's only going to deal 1 due to the resist. Obviously when it quests in, it is incredibly vulnerable, but with something like Lucky Dime you could take advantage of just gaining the 2 every turn. Great way to play something cheap that's going to net you a good amount of lore. She can also sing those early game songs. Next up in the 2-cost slot, but not necessarily a card you're going to want to play on 2, we do have 4 Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, a 2-cost uninkable character this time, 2/1 stat line questing for 2, so he dies to like basically everything damage. He dies to brawl, lots of stuff takes him out, so that's again why I'm saying you wouldn't necessarily want to play him on 2 because of his ability. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it is an item card, you may play that item for free and it enters play exerted, otherwise put it on the bottom of your deck. Obviously hitting something like Fishbone Quill is great with this in and of itself, but hitting something like Lucky Dime and getting a 7-cost item into play for free is crazy. I've found that the optimal strategy with Oswald is particularly a double Oswald play, so if you can go like turn 3 Fishbone Quill ink, go to 4 ink, and then on turn 4 play double Oswald and then ink for the turn and then ink with Fishbone Quill, you can actually look at the top 4 cards of your deck and put any items that you hit into play. I have hit Lucky Dime this way and it felt fantastic. Even hitting something like Popsicle and getting to draw an extra card is like a draw 2 for inking, which is crazy. Oswald can be really good. He just doesn't stay in play long. Next up, we have 3 Visions of the Future, a 2-cost inkable action. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put one of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So it's a great way to continue to kind of filter through that deck. Oswald's going to be letting you look at cards, potentially sending them to the bottom. Vision of the Future is going to be doing the same thing and letting you pick any card from those 5. It's a great way to dig for those answers you may need at any given moment. And it is inkable, so inkable stuff is always good. Next up, in the last card in the 2-drop slot, we are on 4 Sudden Chill, a 2-cost inkable action song. This is the song I was talking about that Ursula can sing and Noi can sing when it is relevant, where each opponent chooses and discards a card. Super good, even better with the next card that we're going to talk about. Being able to make them discard on something that you can sing is really good, particularly on curve with something like Prince John, a 3-cost uninkable character, 1/2 stat line, questing for 2. Has 2 abilities. One of them is Ward, which is fantastic. Does die to something like Grab Your Swords, which is going to deal 2 to everything despite the Ward. And the ability I Sentence You. Whenever your opponent discards 1 or more cards, you may draw a card for each card discarded this way. Obviously, it is fantastic on curve with something like Ursula, so you go like turn 1 Popsicle, turn 2 Ursula, turn 3 Prince John, and then sing Sudden Chill with Ursula. You're immediately making them discard 1 and drawing 1, which is a fantastic swing and card advantage. And the Ward makes him really difficult for your opponent to deal with, also makes him a great target that he quests for 2 for something like Lucky Dime. Next up in the 3-drop slot, and a great follow-up to Prince John, especially when you can get multiple Prince Johns on the table, we have 3 Hypnotize, a 3-cost inkable action. Each opponent chooses and discards a card, you draw a card. Because you're inking so much with this deck, anything that lets you filter through your deck in real time is going to be fantastic for you, and Hypnotize is going to continue to let you do that while creating additional card advantage by making your opponent discard. Bonus points for having 1 or more Prince Johns in play. Next up in the 3-cost slot, and something you do want to be on 3 in certain matchups over something like Prince John, is going to be Fishbone Quill. Particularly in the aggro matchup, Fishbone Quill is going to be where you want to be on turn 3, because you want to get up to some of your bigger heavy hitter cards earlier in the game so you can deal with those aggro threats. Fishbone Quill is a 3-cost inkable item. You can exert it, put any card from your hand into your inkwell face down. It doesn't have to be an inkable card. Always make note of that with Fishbone Quill. Obviously, when you hit this off of something like Oswald, it is coming into play exerted, so you aren't able to take advantage of it right away. But if you're going into those early turns and you're getting a Fishbone Quill onto the board for free, that always feels pretty good. Card that's not going to be penalized for coming into play exerted and another item, we are on 3 Prince John's Mirror, a 3-cost inkable item with 2 abilities. You look regal. If you have a character named Prince John in play, it costs 1 less to play, so you are able to get it out for 2 in that instance. And at the end of each opponent's turn, if they have more than 3 cards in their hand, they discard until they have 3 cards in their hand. So at the end of every one of those turns, they are going to potentially be discarding. It's a great way to prevent them from playing something like Whole New World if they don't think they're in a position where they'll be able to play all 7 cards that they're drawing. They do only technically have to play 4 of them, but Prince John's Mirror can be really good, especially when you're getting it out for free. And when it becomes less useful to you in the mid to late game, it is a great target for Hyrum to just go ahead and banish it and draw 2 more cards. Next up in the 3-drop slot, and a big part of the reason we are playing only 2 ice block, we are on 2 Fang Crossbow, a 3-cost inkable item with 2 abilities: Careful Aim, pay 2 and exert it. Chosen character gets -2 this turn, so great way to take advantage of lowering those characters' attacks again, and it can do it over and over again on an inkable item. The other one that I think is really interesting with this one, particularly with something like Toma, is the Stay Back ability, where you can exert it and banish it to banish chosen dragon character. There are definitely dragon characters that are relevant to the current game, like Sisu and Maleficent Dragon, and then you could potentially recur it again with something like Toma and banish another dragon, which is kind of crazy. I think Fang Crossbow is pretty overlooked in a lot of Sapphire decks. And if you're item heavy anyway, it's like, might as well take advantage of it. Speaking of something you should take advantage of if you are on an item heavy build, we are on 2 Maurices Workshop, a 3-cost uninkable item this time. With 1 ability, looking for this: whenever you play another item, you may pay 1 to draw a card. Obviously fantastic with something like Popsicle. Play a Popsicle, draw a card from Popsicle, draw a card from this, so 2 cards for 2 ink is incredible. Maurices Workshop, though, because it's uninkable, we did only stick with 2, but in an item focused build, I think it really shines. Next up, and our only card in the 4-drop slot, you gotta have him in there for a Sapphire item build, and that is Hyrum Faversham, a 4-cost inkable character, 1/6 stat line, still a really good stat line for a 4-cost. He is questing for 1, and whenever he does so, and whenever he comes into play, you're going to be able to banish an item and draw 2 cards. Great way to get some early game card advantage. If you can go turn 1 Popsicle, turn 2 Ursula, turn 3 Prince John, sing Sudden Chill, and then turn 4 play Hyrum, banish that Popsicle, and draw 2 more, you're so far ahead on card advantage, and you're already making your opponent discard. Bonus points for on turn 4 being able to sing another Sudden Chill. That'd be really crazy. But great way to keep up with that card advantage. There's kind of 2 paths you want to take with this deck. You either want to be on the early game Hyrum path or the early game Prince John path, outside of that very specific instance I was just describing, where you have the perfect storm of cards to take advantage of both. But as far as your mulligan, try to go one or the other. Don't try to get greedy and get that perfect hand every time. Next up, and in line with our mat, we are on a Encanto card. We are on 3 We Don't Talk About Bruno, a 5-cost inkable action song. Don't have any characters in here who can sing this. I don't have any 5-cost characters, but you're going to have so much ink, a lot of times you're just going to be looking to hard cast this anyway, as opposed to holding up a character singing it. And return chosen character to their player's hand, and then they discard a card. Obviously with something like John in play, it's really good. Your opponent may try to rush out the cards from their hand so that they don't have anything for you to force them to discard, but then all of a sudden you bounce something back with We Don't Talk About Bruno, and they're forced to get rid of that, so it becomes removal at that point and nets you additional card draw if you have something like Prince John in play. We're getting down to the last 4 cards on the deck, and one of them I have already mentioned, and that is going to be Lucky Dime, a 7-cost uninkable item. Pay 2 and exert it. Choose a character of yours and gain lore equal to their lore. People thought when this first came out that it was like a $2 card, it wasn't going to be exciting, and then people realized that passive lore gain, kind of where you're not having to quest, you can get it off of a character that just came into play, can be really crazy broken, particularly with something like Toma, who if you have 4 or 5 items out can come down questing for 6 lore potentially, and then you're able to gain that right away with something like Lucky Dime if you have the ink open. It's also, like I mentioned, good with all those small characters who are grabbing you 2 every turn. 2 free lore every turn racks up over time and can definitely potentially get you a win. The only other card in the 7-cost slot and another uninkable, we are on 3 Bend to My Will. Each opponent discards all cards in their hand. There's definitely going to be quite a few matchups where your opponent is rushing their hand onto the board, doesn't have a ton of cards in their hand. You may just be looking to ink this, but if you're going up against something like Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst, anything with a whole new world that's potentially going to try to refill their hand and have a lot of cards in their hand again, anything really draw focused. Green purple can be pretty draw focused. If your opponent is doing something where they have more than like 3 or 4 cards in hand, and especially if you have the ink open, don't have anything else to do on your turn, I think Bend to My Will is more than worth it. Again, bonus points for having a Prince John or 2 in play to grab you some additional card draw when you play it. Then getting down to the last 2 cards, we are jumping over to the 8-drop slot. As I mentioned, we are on 3 Tamatoa, an 8-cost inkable character, 5/8 stat line, questing for 1. Fantastic stat line. It's one of the few characters that can eat up a Maui without going into the bin. And he does have 2 abilities. When you play him and whenever he quests, you'll be able to return an item from your discard to your hand, which is fantastic to just continue to cycle those popsicles. It's always great when you're playing Tamatoa to go ahead and banish a popsicle before he comes into play. Then when you play him, you can take advantage of it. You can target something with the heal, even if it doesn't need to be healed, so definitely keep that in mind. And then his second ability, Glam, he is going to be getting +1 lore for every single item you have in play. So that's where I mentioned he could potentially be questing for 5, 6, maybe more than that in some instances. And then the last card, and this is fantastic for that aggro matchup, is going to be 2 Under the Sea, an 8-cost inkable action song, Sing Together 8. Sing Together is something we have not seen carried over into the newer set, so I don't know if they decided it was just too powerful during set 4 or like we're not going to do that again, but I would definitely like to see some more Sing Together cards. But this is going to put all opposing characters with 2 or less attack on the bottom of their player's deck in any order. Going to be a great time to take advantage of those ice blocks and fang crossbows to give stuff minus attack before you are playing Under the Sea, to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck and getting as many characters onto the bottom of your opponent's deck as possible. If you're ever in a position with this deck that you can reduce the attack of your opponent's characters, play Under the Sea to go ahead and get most of their characters gone from the board, and also play something like Bend to My Will to get rid of their hand. You're in such a crazy driver's seat position that it's just kind of unfair to your opponent. I think this deck is a ton of fun. That is the full list. I think this is something that's getting a little overlooked in the meta right now. I think green blue is potentially going to be really good. I don't know if I have the absolute perfect build of it, but I am enjoying the way that this deck plays a lot. If you have a build of green blue that you're doing something different with, I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments below. Maybe some cards you're playing that I'm not playing, or cards I'm playing that you're not or haven't thought about. If you think my deck list is good, tell me. If you think my deck list is terrible, again, love to hear it. Always want to hear any constructive feedback you guys have, good or bad. That being said, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And when you see those toys, video games, and cute little rabbits named Oswald off in the distance, remember, it is not a mirage. You guys have a great day.